Hey everyone. So, my next conversation is with Amanda Crooke. She is an herbalist, a witch, and a writer, and she's just amazing. She just so beautifully alchemizes all three identities, titles, whatever you want to call them, whether it's in her newsletter or in her courses or in her, create your own path story that she talks about. And it's so funny. When I first started thinking about doing these conversations, she was top of mind, someone that I wanted to ask to be on this. And it was because last year, I took a course with her, an herbalism course that was about 9 months, I think. It was from basically start to finish, watching the process of the herbs. And I have this one very specific memory of, we were on like a lunch break, all of us, and everyone's talking about celebrities that have the same birthdays. And me, being me, I chimed in and I was like, well, I'm not so interested in celebrities that have the same birthday. I'm more excited about people that have died on my birthday. So, like a death day. And I was like, James Baldwin and Aleister Crowley on my birthday. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about it this way. And Amanda was like, that's amazing. When's your birthday? And so that day, we found out we share a birthday, and I let Amanda know that Aleister Crowley and James Baldwin have a death day on her birthday. Enjoy this conversation. Okay. So, one, thank you for agreeing to have this conversation with me because um I started doing this thing where I'm a Reiki practitioner, so I am obviously very interested in sort of alternative forms of healing, but also just, different things that contribute to self-actualization and self-healing. And for me, like when I think of you, I think of herbalism, but I also think of, your witchy magic and your like spiritual practice and how you combine both of those is like so you, like so your own. Like, and so I don't even know what I'm going to call this conversation because I don't want to limit it. I want to talk about your writing. I want to talk about all the magic, all the things. And I don't know what this is going to be, and it's okay. So don't think I expect you to talk about anything specific, Amanda, not at all. Um, and yeah, so that was when you like accepted the invite, I was like, oh my gosh. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be.
Um, so I guess like we could just start with um how you sort of started your journey with herbalism and your spiritual practice and all of the good stuff that's kind of culminated into who you are now. I know that's actually like a big question. Sorry. Let's start with something.
That's a really big question. I think that some answers to that question is a lot shorter. Um, let's see. I mean, if you want to go really back to the beginning, the first herb I ever really learned to work with was plantain leaf,
Mm,
or like where I grew up, we called it plantain leaf. Um, and my mom taught us how to use that for skin healing, like how you could just chew it up and, put it on wounds. And I actually did that a lot as I was a kid. And my sister and I, we knew that dandelions were really good for you, but we didn't really understand what part. And so my mom's family were dairy farmers. So we spent a lot of time on the farm. And my sister, for context, is now a veterinarian. And we would like collect, because we knew the plantain was helpful and we knew dandelion was helpful. So, but we didn't know that it was like the leaf. So we would collect plantain leaves and dandelion flowers and make little burritos with like the cow's food and like feed them to whatever cows would come to the fence. And then we would try and like track and see if those cows seemed healthier. So that was probably the first herbs that I used. But then if you fast forward, I guess I must have been interested in herbalism to some degree. Like I don't know what exactly brought me there, but I was interested enough that to me when I was in college, I worked on veggie farms in the summer, and someone on one of the first farm I worked at, which was Genesis Farms in New Jersey, someone there taught me how to harvest nettle and use nettle for cramps.
Mhm.
No, that's not true. She taught me how to harvest nettle. No, that is true. Okay, got it. That is true. Taught me how to harvest nettle, to use nettle for cramps. And when I went back to school that fall, I started um, drinking nettle tea, like when I would have my period. And that was when I started to notice that when I was drinking the tea for those like 2 days, I didn't sneeze.
Mhm.
And I had been such an allergenic person that was like amazing to me that I could go like 1 or 2 days without sneezing. Um, so that's when I started really reading everything I could get my hands on about nettle and other herbs. And I just started getting like a number of herbal books and reading herbal books. And so when I was in college, I started um, like I would buy pre-blended, I would buy loose leaf herbs and then also pre-blended herbal mixes and make tinctures and oils with them.
Mm.
Um, and just like I was learning different teas for wellness, like, for like if you feel a cold coming on or things like that.
Right.
Um, and then I just continued, I would say, like self-studying as I started farming. And then at some point, a few years later, I did my first like 8-month long herbal training program. And actually then started my business a year later. So that year I grew herbs on the farm where I was working. And then, started Locust Light the next year.
Mhm. And so, like, what do you think was driving the interest? Was it like, you felt empowered to like, boost your own health? There's like a plane flying over. I don't know if you can hear it. You felt like empowered to sort of take care of yourself and self heal, or was it, you just felt more connected to the earth by, adding these herbs into your daily like regimen? Like, what was it that was driving it, do you think?
Always been interested in ways to stay healthy, which I maybe would differentiate from like ways to heal from illness, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense.
No, yeah.
Like I haven't like ever had a particular interest in being a doctor or a nurse or anything like that. Like I'm actually really squeamish. Like, um, you know, I, I have no interest in anything that really directly involves like me interacting with other people's bodily fluids. Like that is just cannot fathom that. But I'm interested in like the daily care that keeps you well or could prevent chronic illness or that sort of thing. And I didn't really grow up eating many vegetables. But so when I started veggie farming, that was like a huge like revelation to me. And I started learning how to cook and cooking for myself and learning more about nutrition. And again, not learning about nutrition from any sort of academic perspective, but just like how to eat whole foods and
Mhm.
cook whole foods and eat seasonally and that kind of thing. And like learning about healthy fats and like the healthier ways to eat grains, um, or like healthier dairy products, like that kind of thing. And so I think herbalism to me was just an extension of that interest. And I'm sure there must have been, it's funny because I think that when things like flow really naturally, it can be hard to remember how they started.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and but I'm sure there must have been some sort of like romantic calling in my heart towards herbs.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't remember that it was ever like, it didn't feel like a decision. It just felt like something I was curious about and kept following. It didn't really become a decision until it was like the winter of 2013 where I moved to New Hope, which is the area that I live in now. I don't live exactly in New Hope, but I live nearby. So that year I had helped a friend start a veggie farm in this area and worked with her full time doing that and loved it, but also knew it wasn't quite right for me. So I was just having this like kind of like, mid 20 or young 20 something crisis about like, I really love this kind of work, but I also know that something about it is really not exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And that was just like really hard for me because I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. Um, and then finally that winter, I just did a lot of journaling and thinking and sketching things out. And that was when I made like the decision to do an herbal training program,
Mm-hmm.
and that maybe growing veggies wasn't right for me, but maybe growing herbs was. I was also really interested in growing grains. Um, so that I think that's when it became more of a decision. But before that, it was just something that I was really curious about.
Mm. And then, so when did you start Look It's Light again? It was
2015.
2015. Okay. So then those 2 years in between, it was kind of like, solidifying that it was going to be herbs.
Yeah. So I made that decision, say like to study herbalism, like in the winter, like around like when 2014 was starting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was working on that farm full time, but I was like, I had an herb patch at the farm where I was growing herbs to practice growing them because they're like quite different from vegetables. And that was when I did my first like herbal training program through that year.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you don't have the farm right now. So how was that? Like I read your newsletters. I'm a fan of newsletters. Um, so I've like, every now and then I'll just like I just love keeping up with your process as far as like, like stripping away the identity of a farm owner to like what am I now? And then you're like, I want to step into, this dream I had of writing too. But and then like so I want to talk about that a little bit because I think what you're doing right now is so fun and like experimental and like I feel like it's really just blending it all so beautifully, Amanda, like honestly. So I want you to talk about your project.
I love. Yeah, I think the writing project helped with the sadness I was having about not having um, a piece of land to be working on. Like I was quite sad about that this spring, and I would, I'd go to the farm or like the garden, and it'd be beautiful, and then I would just cry. Um, but it's just true that like when you have land that you're managing, it's a thing that takes up all the little spaces in between, and you're always thinking like, oh well, I should. And I don't live that close to it. I live 20 minutes away, so it's like
Mhm.
maybe a little more than 20 minutes, but like, it's like, oh, I should go there and weed whack. I should mow. There's all these tending projects, and it's not like it was ever like right outside my door. And, one day I will have what I hope to be a larger property than I'm managing. And again, there's going to be the weed whacking, the mowing, the plowing, the fence maintenance, building maintenance. Like there's so much that goes into tending a piece of property that is not just like the fun parts of like planting and growing and harvesting herbs.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been so eager for that, just my whole adult life. But it really like in June, I realized like, oh, this actually is the opportunity for me to start this writing project. And writing projects also can take up all the spaces in between. um, and so I'm not going to say that they're mutually exclusive because maybe they don't have to be, but I guess like in my life where I'm also doing other things, like running a business and living a domestic life, cooking and uh, they feel a little bit mutually exclusive. So yeah, so once I like shifted that mindset, I was like, okay, I might not have a property for 1 to a few years, but in that time, I can focus on this writing that I've just like put to the side for a while. That's made me feel a lot better, and that's like actually really exciting to me.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I was maybe not preparing quite for this call, but I was thinking about it, and I was thinking like, I wonder, like, if Stephanie asks me how I came up with the idea for this story, like, I have no clue. Honestly, like, I just can't remember.
Hmm.
Um, I remember I was thinking it was years ago, but I realized I think it was only like 2 years ago when because I switched. I know when I had the idea for the story because I switched my email service provider so that I could do the story via email. Because
Oh,
so
okay.
it's like yeah, because the one I had, so in order to, so for any of you, I should say what this project is. So the project is a choose your own adventure story delivered via email, and it's forest magic themed. Um, so, you go through the story, and some of the emails have a choice to make, and the choice you make determines the next chapters you get. So it's like a lot of uh, back end tech work going on. And the email service provider I had been using just wasn't, at least at that time, sophisticated enough to handle the tech work. So I moved my whole email list to a different service provider. And I think that was like August, I think it was August of 2020 um, that I did that. So like I can like go back and very clearly say like, when did I get this idea to do this? Um, but if you had asked me, I thought it was like 2018. Like I had like no concept of when I had even done this. Yeah. So that part is a little fuzzy to me. I do know that the first time I did any creative writing about gnomes and fairies was August of 2018, which I think is maybe I conflated the two because I was vending at the New England Women's Herbal Conference that year. And like, I guess there was an overflow of vendors, and they asked for permission to do this ahead of time, but I didn't really understand what it meant. So for some overflow vendors, maybe the ones who weren't as senior or whatever, um, we weren't in like the vendor emporium. We were in like a horse barn.
Mm,
So imagine like a really small horse barn with just like one pathway and then stalls, kind of removed from
right.
the
Set
rest
us.
of the farm. Yeah. So like I was there, and I guess I did attend a few classes, but I also just spent a lot of time like sitting at the table, and I was extremely bored, like so extremely bored. And I have a kind of a commitment to myself that when I'm at herbal conferences, I'm not on my phone. So I was just like there being bored. And I had like an opening line of a poem in my head for a few weeks at that point. And so I just sat there and I like wrote this whole very long, I wouldn't even call it a poem, it's more like an oral story. Um, and that kind of laid the foundation of maybe my like cosmovision of the way the gnomes and the fairies are working with the ecology. um, and yeah, so that was the first time I did that kind of writing, but I have no idea like when the story started.
Have you like ever read something like this that like inspired that it was going to be like pick your own, or is it like, because I also thought of like video games sometimes do that, like pick your own, like,
Mhm.
the character will make a decision and then they go on a different story. Like what, it just feels like, what if it just, it sounds like a lot of work, like sounds really complex, like triple the amount of work to write a story. But I just like, I don't know, that part is just so fascinating to me. Like to like just make it more, I'm losing my words, Amanda, right now, but like make it more personal and like more, it just feels the interactive feature in it is seems so new to me in a story. So like have you read something like this? Like did something inspire um that structure?
Well, I was born in 1989, so I grew up in the 90s, and there were those choose your own adventure books. Um, I don't, did you ever read those like when you were a kid?
No.
So there's a book. So and actually the phrase choose your own adventure is copyrighted. So that's why my stories are called choose your own path. And I hope that's legally
Mm,
okay. But there was a series of books called choose your own adventure where it's like you read a story and then it tells you to go to a different page. So I liked those and I read some of them. I wouldn't say they were um, like the most profound experience of my childhood. They certainly weren't my favorite books, but like I knew about them that way. Um, I've never played video games, so but I know that this sort of thing like does lend itself to a video game.
Mhm.
But I just I haven't ever done that. Um, yeah, truly, like I could not tell you. I think that my underlying motivation here is like, so um for the past about year and a half, I've been writing these letters from a witch, which I also think of as interactive fiction, which is you can get this letter from me that's the letter itself is more of like a nature essay, and then there's other like little clippings in the letter. So there's usually like a poem, um, and or maybe a ritual, and then like this newspaper from a fake town called Mulberry Meadows. So there's like clippings of the Mulberry Meadows Gazette, which, by the way, the story is set in the forest outside of Mulberry Meadows.
Mm,
Yeah, so that's been fun.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, and so I think that I definitely have this like mischief side of me where and I think maybe it's from all my years like teaching adults herbalism, is that part of something that I always want to do in classes or just for adults is to like kind of like poke their curiosity a little bit or help people to be a little more curious or wonder like, is this real? Or maybe like make someone stop and like look at something again a different way, or just like take life a little less seriously.
Mm,
um, and so I think that my idea, like as I started writing the paper, but again, like I had the choose your own adventure story idea, I guess 2 years ago, and I didn't start writing the paper till a year and a half ago. So I don't know this timeline, but I definitely have that like mischievous edge where I like to like hide little things in and sneak things in. Um, yeah, that's all I got. I don't know.
I mean, so you have the letters from a witch. Now you have your choose your own path story. Are you also teaching classes currently or like for the fall? Do you have anything coming up?
I've actually been really working on my fall plans,
Hmm.
um, and my plans for next year. Um, I'm planning. I'm not sure when this episode is going to come out, but or whenever it will be posted somewhere. Um, but I would really like to streamline my offerings because I've just been feeling like my website is crowded and confusing. And so I'm actually going to discontinue my plant magic classes
Mm,
and focus all my online offerings on the story, because so this is going to be the first in a series of stories.
mhm.
So after this story, there will be an associated herb class delivered via email that is happening within the world of the story. So if
Ooh.
you want to like learn herbs via fiction, but also like get materia medica sheets and stuff like that, that's
Mhm.
going to be an option. So that I have not started writing. But so that will be, and those will be like forest medicinals. And then once that's complete, I would like to write another choose your own that focuses on meadow ecology, and then have a meadow follow up. So I really want to like move towards focusing on the stories. Um, and I would still like to teach like a monthly online class. So um, I'm sketching that out right now. And then just like have everything on my website more clearly directed towards that.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm currently figuring out exactly what type of in-person teaching I'd like to do next year and how much. I've been teaching intro to herbalism here in this classroom.
Mhm.
And I really have liked that. It's the first time I've taught a longer, more comprehensive intro class. And I've had a great time with that. Um, so I'd like to do that again. And then I'm just figuring out, exactly what offerings might make sense.
Mm. I remember there was a point where you were also teaching classes at Grounds for Sculpture, right? Like every time I would like try and sign up, it's sold out. I'm like,
I'm teaching one on Saturday.
are you really?
Yeah.
I can't make this one. But I've only ever been to that space once, and like it's funny because actually twice, lies, twice. And once was to go to a talk for Elizabeth Gilbert. And to me, you and her have similar energy to me. It's just like this magical sort of, yeah, like playfulness, like so much depth, but like, like you can just eat, like you can hold the humor in the world as you hold this depth, which I don't think, I think that's a really special thing. um so amazing. I'm so happy you're still teaching that. Yeah, this I'm hoping to release this beginning of October because I feel like that's just how it's going to work out. That's why. And so once uh right before I release it, or you can send it to me later, but I do want like your website information, like how people can sign up for your newsletter, your create your own path story, all of it. Um, and I will definitely post that with this. And I know you're not on social media really, but I will of course tag you in this video, and then it's gonna go on YouTube as well. And yeah, I really don't know what I'm doing with this, Amanda, if I'm being completely honest, like in general, the conversations, but I just I feel like I get to interact with such amazing, special humans that are doing all these weird, fun things. And I just wanted to share that with maybe someone that needs to see it, needs to hear it, needs to like read this story. But yeah, so thank you so much. And also, like, seriously, I'm gonna keep an eye out for the in-person classes because I really feel like I've been missing. I was only on the farm for like a year, and I still feel like I'm surrounding myself with all these plants that are not herbs, but it's like I just feel like I miss like this connection to like literally being able to take my socks off and put my feet in the dirt and like never having experienced that before. Just that freedom. I'm just so grateful for that space that you created, and it will come back and it's going to be amazing.